Well, there we go. Thanks for the great intro, and very welcome to any of those joining us for the live stream. Of course, my name is Con26, as mentioned, and I am dialing in from lovely, beautiful South Africa. It's Laman said good morning, and I'll say good evening to you. It's 8 o'clock here in South Africa. Beautiful, nice summer's day. So I wouldn't be any other place in the world than being here right now with you. Very excited, of course, to also join you in April in Orlando. We're not seeing enough of our friends lately, so I'm very excited to be there. So for any of you who will be attending the conference, and especially if you're attending my workshop, I'd love to see you there. I'd love to hang out. Don't be afraid. Come up to me, come introduce yourself, make new friends. That's what community is all about. So very excited to be here, and thank you so much for making me part of this event. Now, this specific session in my workshop, of course, will be looking at intranets. I'm very passionate about intranets. So even though a big focus of what I do is change management and adoption, and I do quite a bit of training, I also very much focus and specialize on the modern workplace. So I'm very passionate about and very empathetic into helping companies transform their employees. So I still build a lot of intranets. So I still believe that they're very relevant. And I hope that in the next about 20 minutes, I can convince you that you are making the right decision to do this. You have to use SharePoint Online to build your intranet. I don't think there's any other way to do this. So the topics that we'll be covering, of course, is, and I'll start with the negative bits first, is why do intranets fail? Because they do fail. I'm not going to make any jokes about that. Intranets definitely fail. So why is it that they are failing? And then if we do it right, what's the benefits, right? A big thing for me around all of this, not just intranets, but around the adoption in Microsoft 365, the adoption of Copilot, all of that, a very, very big integral part of that is the digital strategy. So I do want to touch on a couple of points when it comes to that. And then I also want to talk about out-of-the-box features. That was quite interesting. I had to really decide whether it's OTB or OOTB, but apparently, according to Copilot, it's OOTB. Okay, so that will be it. Out-of-the-box functionality and citizen developers. And then, is out-of-the-box enough? I mean, we've been customizing and complicating things for years because we thought out-of-the-box wasn't enough. So can we take a look at that in 2026 and make a decision whether out of the box is going to be enough? And then why is this important? Why is things like digital strategy, out of the box features and functionality, and my citizen developers? Why is this so important to me? And then, of course, I am going to finish off and just look at the time and see if there's any specific points and any final notes I'd like to leave you with. So without further ado, I'd like to start with why intranets fail. I'm pretty sure everyone's got a good idea around why intranets fail. Okay, so let's take a look at what the top reasons are. Now, the first thing, and I've already touched on this, is that if there's no digital strategy, that's a big problem. And it's not just regarding your intranet. I mean, not having a digital strategy is difficult. So if employees doesn't know what goes where, if they're not clear about what goes to OneDrive, what goes to Teams, what goes to standalone SharePoint, like communication sites, then that's a difficult discussion to have. They will be confused and they will be storing things in the wrong place. And it's going to cause duplication, silos, confusion, and at the end, mistrust in the intranet. So that's a very important thing, is your digital strategy. And in the workshop as well, I definitely want to spend quite a bit of time around the digital strategy as well. So I definitely think that we should put 70% of our efforts into planning and the strategic stuff, and then 20 to 30% into the tech stuff, because the tech stuff's actually getting easier. So then the second item for me is linked to that, and that's, of course, poor information architecture. So that's very much linked to your digital strategy. Now, when content is placed randomly, I mean, we know this, and it's not grouped logically or labeled inconsistently, users cannot mentally map the environment. They can't kind of just know where things go. They can't kind of plan or understand where to go find something because there's no logic to it. And that's what good information architecture obviously gives us. So that goes hand in hand with your digital strategy, of course. Then I know someone needs to say it, but lack of governance, again, very much ties into digital strategy. This normally stays last. People normally only look at governance when it's too late, when they start having issues. So lack of governance is definitely a big one for me. And without that, without the naming and the tagging and the versioning and archiving and lifecycle management, I know your intranet will just become cluttered and chaotic. Okay, so governance isn't all about policing, it's about protecting. I want you to think about that. Governance actually creates an environment that gives safety. So think of it that way. It definitely gives you a place where it's safer when you know what the rules is. It isn't just about policing and the system. Okay. Then definitely also over complex and cluttering it. So overly complex and cluttered. I see this all the time. We complicate intranets, we make them too complex, and there's just too many things, too many links, too many widgets, too much text can be very overwhelming. So if everything feels important, then nothing's important. So remember that. If we put an exclamation on everything, if we bold everything, if we put everything in your face on the first page, then it's very difficult for an end user employee who navigates your intranet to understand what's really important in the company. Then very important, I keep on saying this, I think I'm going to say this about every bullet point, very important, okay, is no business ownership. In all the years that I've been building intranets, this is my top one, is no business ownership. So so often the intranet sits on the IT side and business just assumes that IT should sort it out. And that's a major problem. IT is there to support the platform, to be your technical partner in it, but business is supposed to actually own your intranet, and that doesn't always happen. Everyone wants it. I'm sure everyone knows that meme where they say, who wants change? And everyone puts up their hands, and then they say, who wants to change? And then it's crickets. Okay, and that's what happens with business ownership. If we don't have that buy-in, and if it's just seen as an IT job, so none of the content's going to be important, then it's going to get stale. Okay, so the departments, they have to contribute, they have to be involved in it. And it's not just an HR portal. Remember that as well. HR shouldn't be the only business owner to it. It should be a collective decision between different departments and ownerships. So definitely no business ownership is a big one. Then not connected to daily work. So that's an interesting thing to think of. So if the modern it's not integrated. So if this modern intranet of yours is not integrated with other systems, if it's a completely standalone system, then it's a standalone place that people have to navigate to. But because we can connect it in your daily work, because everything can plug into it, it makes it better. So even with Viva Connections, if you think of how we can now plug our intranets into Microsoft Teams, and I know it's been quite some time already that we can do that, it really makes it much easier to go there. You know, the traditional way we had of setting a policy in the browser that forces the intranet to open. I'm actually laughing just thinking of this. That doesn't force people to use the intranet. They just close the tab and open another one. That's not the way that you get adoption, is by forcing a policy. Okay, so put it there where they're working already. Put it in the middle of the ecosystem, and you'll definitely get better adoption. So also not connected to daily work. Something else as well is that it's hard to use. So of course, if it's a maze, if the navigation is bad, unclear naming conventions, search doesn't work great or doesn't actually deliver what it should deliver, people give up and then they don't go there again. Then they're going to save. If they take a half an hour to find the policy they're looking for, they're going to save it on their desktop so they can find it next time faster. Okay, so if it's hard to use, if it's bad UI and UX, they simply will just find workarounds. So we have to focus on that. Then also, of course, if it's not kept up to date, no, not being kept up to date is directly linked to no business ownership and to the digital strategy. All of these things are beautifully connected. Okay, so if it's not being kept up to date, old news, expired documents. Something I see so often is that you'll search for something in the intranet and you'll find leave policy updated 28 September 2019, and then you get leave policy version 3.2, 15 April 2025. We have to look at versioning, we have to look at cleaning out our intranets, okay? So good naming conventions, making sure that links aren't broken. It definitely damages your credibility, of course. So once users assume that the intranet is outdated, they'll stop visiting it. Once you go to Pinterest and you see the same pictures and you go again in the same pictures, you're not going to go back to Pinterest, right? So even if you later on fix the issues, you've lost that client already, okay? So that's very, very important to take note of. Then also no training or support. It's amazing how many people think that if this is good enough, you don't need to train people. And that's not true. We still have to train people, okay? We still have to expose people to things. I've seen companies rebrand the intranet and change it from blue to green and then have to train everyone again, but it's because the navigation is still difficult, okay? So that is important to look at training and support and make sure that you're not losing out. And I'm not just talking about the consumers of your intranet, okay? I'm also talking about your contributors, the people building the intranet. So it definitely goes both ways. So the training and support, making sure that people know how to use things, how to find things. You'd think in this day and age, it's 2026, everyone can Google, everyone can find what they want, everyone knows how to search, and that's not true. So be very careful of assuming that people know exactly how things work. Okay, so put that effort in. And then last but not least, in my big page of big files, okay, build it and they will come. That's definitely one of the biggest problems. If you launch an intranet without a campaign or change management, you think if you're going to put it down, people will just consume it, you're making a mistake. Any big change in the company requires campaigning and change management, okay? So that doesn't work. You have to promote new features, you have to celebrate improvements, and you have to gather feedback, okay, and act on it. That's important. Actively drive the engagement as well. Give feedback to people. Take note of what they're saying and change things. If you look at continuous improvement cycles, they normally talk about every 3 months, okay, so not to make changes too often. I'm not talking about news updates now, but definitely look at your feedback and every 3 months go into a cycle of saying, what are the new things we can change or what can we adapt, okay? Get business involved, because I think that that's a great benefit that we'll have. So that's my big bad slide of files, okay? We're definitely going to step away from that. So very, very important. Another thing that I also see that kind of sits on top of this that does go wrong, I don't necessarily add it as a file, but it's something that I see very often. And that is when companies try to mirror their external websites. And it's more common than you think. It definitely happens. So the intranet ends up being very formal and salesy. So if this had to be your company intranet, it's very salesy, it's very formal. Let's face it, the chairs are not comfortable, okay? And it's all the corporate colors to a T, Arial font 12, okay? We have to stick to the CI. And you've got to be very careful to try and make that your intranet, okay? We have to create an environment for our employees that are slightly different. I know that we have to stick to things like CI and there's rules and regulations, okay? But for our employees, that fancy restaurant doesn't have to be like that. We want to create a space for our employees that's fun to hang out at. It creates culture. They're happy to go there. They can sit down. They can have coffee. They can catch up, okay? So be very, very careful to create an environment that perfectly mirrors your company's external website. I see that very, very often. Create a space where there's room to breathe. Everything doesn't have to be the perfect corporate colors, okay? I just want to mention that. I'm tough about that, so please don't do that to yourself. Okay, so if we then look at all of this, I think a very important thing I can mention to you is please, 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 we need to stop building the intranets for the people who pay for them. The guys with the checkbooks around the boardroom tables. Stop trying to build your intranets for them and start trying to build your intranets for the people who will use them, because it tends to be two different audiences. Don't be afraid to take that step out there. Focus on the people that will really get the value from the intranet and build and design it for them. Okay, so that's super important. Now, this brings me to the positive, happy stuff. Okay, so the benefits, if we do this right, and when I say do this right, your intranet, I'm only talking SharePoint Online. Okay, I'm the biggest fan of SharePoint forever. It's turning 25 soon. Okay, took me about 25 years to figure a couple of things out as well, and I'm very excited to be there along the journey. Okay, now the benefits of doing this right, there's many of them. Okay, but I'm going to share a couple of them with you. So the first one definitely would be is to have a central communication hub. Okay, to have one place where the communication is, not emails all over and that type of thing. Single central communication hub, very important. Single source of the truth, super important. Single source of the truth. Okay, then also to look at increased productivity and efficiencies. And what I mean by that is bringing that in together, supplying the tools that people need, the links to systems, the things they need to find, controlled documents that they need in the company. So those type of tools, documents, information, all of that reduces time. So it's not a waste of time when you try and find those things. Of course, also governance, compliance, and security. So the intranets provide a structured, controlled environment to store this type of sensitive content, of course, with the correct permissions and the governance processes, and it supports regulatory and auditory needs. Okay, and that kind of touches on my next point. I've worked in an ISO environment, and of course, there's many of those regulatory type of certifications. But I've always built intranets, and they've perfectly been there to support any of the ISO type of requirements we might have. So that's definitely a big win as well. Then also streamlining your employee experience. I've always said that your intranet can be the best onboarding tool ever. So if you can't think of the employees, first think of any new starters. Try and put the things in there that makes their life easier, because as existing employees, we're terrible at telling new employees where to find what. We're terrible. We're not great at that. So use the intranet to be a place where new employees can actually find the things that they need from an onboarding perspective. Very important. Then also much stronger organizational culture and engagement. This is a brand identity builder, people. This, if done right, can be used so well to build brand, to build culture, and to engage people. Of course, the integration with Microsoft 365 is phenomenal. So being able to plug in your videos and Microsoft Forms and even embed sways, all of that, bringing it into your intranet and being able to integrate it with other systems is a very big win, and it's a really big benefit. Not different systems that doesn't work together. And then last but not least would be your reduced IT overhead. If done correctly, it will have a positive impact on this. Now that we know what the files are and we know what the benefits are, I want you to think of something. Imagine you walk into the reception at your company's head office. Very smart reception, nice leather couches, beautiful wooden table, and on it there's this glossy book lying there, this brochure, and you're waiting to go for an interview. And you start paging through this this brochure, this beautiful glossy brochure, and it tells you about the company, and it tells you about HR and who's HR and what do they do and what do they focus on. And you page further and there's IT. There's the IT team, and that's what they do. And that's the things they focus on, and that's their mission statement. Well, that's exactly what your intranet should be. So think of it next time when you do a redesign and when you decide what you want on there. That is a book that speaks on your behalf when you're not there to speak up. So use your intranet and use it correctly. Always a good question to leave people with. So if your intranet vanished tomorrow, what would break first? If something broke, of course. I mean, we're not sure how good it's being used. Is it culture, compliance, or the communication channels? So go and think of if it suddenly wasn't there, what is it that people would miss? Okay, so next up, and we don't have a lot of time yet, so I want to go through to the digital strategy, just very quick high-level overview. I want you to think of your Microsoft tenant as you would an estate with a lot of complexes in it, like a lot of houses and units and things. So if you think of that estate, there's going to be, the estate's going to be your Microsoft 365 tenant. You're going to have personal storage little units or garages, and that's your OneDrives. And then you're going to have a lot of teams, which is your little complexes and duplexes and simplexes and houses. So that's your Microsoft Teams. And then, of course, you have a communal area. And that's where your the pool is that everyone can use, and the clubhouse, and maybe the gym that people can share. That's your intranet. Think of it that way. If this was all scattered and built in between each other and people didn't really know where to go for the services that they can use together, then it wouldn't work. So the same goes for your intranet. Please think of this when you look at your environment, that structure is important because it gives a purpose to things, and it actually helps with the consumption of those services. So just on that note, and also when it comes to the digital strategy, I always do this example with companies, or this little exercise. This is my me, we, and us infographic that I've used for years and designed years ago. But your intranet sits right in that, and that's where you have to go to your digital strategy, and you have to make sure that your end users understand, when do I use OneDrive? When do I use Microsoft Teams? And when do I use publishing portals in SharePoint? Because then they'll understand where the content is being stored, and you won't have duplicate content, and it won't affect you that much. If we then look at these out-of-the-box features, of course, I'm a big fan of SharePoint. Then the citizen developer comes into this as well. Now, I'm sure we all know what this is now. It's become such a buzzword over the last 10 years. But of course, a citizen developer is a non-IT, non-developer business user. Okay, we can create digital solutions using low code or no code. Low code or no code, okay, because a lot of the tools we use has got code built into the background. We don't have to write the code anymore, which is pretty cool. So that's our citizen developers. And then out of the box, of course, is when we use the default tools and capabilities that comes with SharePoint Online. Okay, so no custom coding, no custom scripting, or third-party add-ons. And if we look at the citizen developers, of course, there is major benefits in using citizen developers that builds your intranet. And I'm talking about your employees, because they are citizen developers. Major cost savings, faster innovation and problem solving, which is incredible, reduced IT backlogs and dependency, increased productivity, responsible digital growth, which is great, improved data management because the people are working in the process, enhanced communication and collaboration, continuous learning and digital maturity, that's my favorite. And all of that, of course, is what we get from investing in our end users, which become our citizen developers. Then a quick touch on, is out of the box enough? Okay, so is this really enough, the out of the box? I'm going to take you back, and I don't know who has worked with what versions in SharePoint. Okay, I've had quite a long journey. It's not 25 years. My journey with SharePoint's been about 20 odd years, just over 20. But I can tell you that if I look back at SharePoint, and don't make a mistake, this was pretty sexy at the time, okay? So don't think for a moment we can look back at it now and say it wasn't good enough. Of course it was good enough, but we're taking it to the journey that we've walked. So if we had to take a look at 2007 or 2010 or 2013 SharePoint, okay, we've come a long way. So of course, when we had those environments, it didn't quite give us everything that we needed. So a lot of times out of the box just might not have been good enough, or just wasn't enough, even though I've always been an out of the box girl. But I understand why many companies did add extra to their intranets, because they wanted more. And if we look at what you have today, my word, if you just go and look at the SharePoint lookbook and you look at the beautiful layouts and things that you can achieve, then I can tell you there's not a lot that we need outside of out of the box. Okay, I'm a big out of the box fan, so I'm like absolutely voting for let's make out of the box cool again. Okay, I think we should do that because I think it's enough. In SharePoint these days as well, I'll just touch on a couple of things. You can now, of course, create, and with the site branding, you can create new custom multicolored themes, okay, which wasn't that easy before. And also, No PowerShell. You don't have to go and do PowerShell to do this. You do this right there in the SharePoint UI. So it makes it even easier for our citizen developers to be able to do this from the front SharePoint UI, to be able to create custom multicolor themes for these sites. Beautiful. Then, of course, also, if I look at some of the changes that came through in the last while, a big change that came in was the new flexible sections that you can add on SharePoint, which means no longer do we have that very rigid grid, 3 columns or 2 columns or 1 column, and it's got to be totally aligned, and there's spaces between things that used to drive everyone crazy. And now we have the flexible sections as well, which brings a lot of extra moving around SharePoint and being able to do changes on pages. Then also the modern news pages and normal pages that you can build, so stunning. Okay, so very, very beautiful pages. Go try them out. This is the perfect tool as well for someone to learn how to build pages. So ask for a separate site. Don't go and test on the intranet. Ask for an extra site that you can play in. You can actually do it on your sites as well that you might already have. Go and test, build one of these sites, go break it apart. That's how I learn. I build one and then I go edit it and I go see what did they do. And I try and figure it and I try and break it, and that's how I learn. So that's a beautiful place to go and try the new features and functionality as well. Beautiful, beautiful pages. Now, what does this give us at the end of the day? This means that, okay, no longer do I have to be a serious developer or have some degree in something or be certified in something to be able to be a contributor or an owner of my intranet. Now, of course, if you look at the new modern pages, news templates, which are super sexy, okay? This means that, for example, Sarah, the eccentric Sarah in HR, can now be part of the intranet team while using Copilot as her assistant. I'm not doing anything without Copilot anymore, I'm sorry. So, and this is without having the serious technical skills or dev skills. Okay, so the benefit is that Sarah understands HR and she understands employees and she knows what's important to her. So who better to help contribute to the company intranet? It's time that we utilize the tools we're already paying for, which is SharePoint Online, and we invest back in our greatest assets, which is our employees, and help them build out our intranets because they know best. They just need the little bit of help to learn the technical skills, of course. So let's support eccentric Sarah in HR for her to build that HR. Now, why is all of this important? Of course, why do we want to use out-of-the-box features? Why do we want to train our users to be citizen developers and really learn how SharePoint works? And that's because Microsoft launches an insane number of new features and feature updates on a regular basis. And keeping it simple means that we won't break stuff and it's scalable. Okay, so if you just go and have a look at the Microsoft roadmap and you go and you look at just updates for SharePoint, you'll see how many updates is launched on a regular basis. Okay, so that's why it's a good reason to try and not complicate your intranet. And then also, you can go to the Microsoft Tech community and go and search. If you search for, if you go to blogs at the top and you then go to SharePoint, you'll absolutely see latest features that's been launched, any web or blog articles about new updates that has come to it. And again, you can then see and utilize the latest features because so much gets changed often. No longer do we wait 3 years for an update. It happens daily, okay? And that's the best reason ever to do this the right way. Use out-of-the-box SharePoint Online features. Learn how to use Copilot as well, of course, in your duties and in making your life easier and saving time and keeping your eye on the Microsoft 365 roadmap as well as on the tech community for blogs. And that actually brings me perfectly on time. Okay, so I've recapped very, very important things that I did want to in the session. So I think I'm quite good with that. I'd like to remind you that I'll be in Orlando in April. So I'm hoping that you'll come hang out with me, come speak to me. There you can see as well, there's a QR code that you can scan to get $150 as well off on the price. So that's for the workshops. And then I've also got a session that I'm delivering. But then I do hope that you are considering joining us in Orlando. I think it's going to be an incredible conference. So in April, Looking forward to seeing you there. And please come up and introduce yourself if we haven't met. I'd love to make new friends.